Go where the prompt takes you. When you're working for a prompt, don't get hung up on the idea that you need to do it the same way as everyone else. Every prompt will take everybody on a different journey. So I'm working in my Playing with Prompts composition book, and I am using my 100 pick a prompt cards, and I picked the prompt woodland. So where this prompt is taking me, I do a bit of a brain dump and I brainstorm materials that I have, ideas that I have, quotes that I have, anything that relates to that theme or that word. And with the new theme woodland, I remembered that I have these rice papers that are manufactured and made by NINNYSNAPKINS.com. You can look at the description box to see these. While some of these focal images aren't my cup of tea, even if I was using the focal image with rice papers, I'm very unlikely to use the entire sheet. So you end up using, if I use the focal image, you end up with lots of little bits. And this technique to start my page, to break my page, I'm just going to use those bits. Now, all these woodland rice papers from Ninny's Napkins have a similar color palette. There's browns and beige and a dark navy. And I'm just going to harvest those parts. Now, this idea came from Vicky Papineau, and she uses a lot of rice paper in a similar way. And I thought, I'm going to give that a try. Not exactly my comfort. I'm just going to basically use these rice papers, these leftover bits, to start my color story, to break the page. It's going to give texture to the page. So I'm just cutting those into whatever shape rectangles. And here I am just giving my composition book a coat of gesso. These pages are pretty flimsy, even though I've glued a couple together. So I just want to beef it up a little bit. So now I have all these rectangles and squares. I haven't paid attention to any of the patterning on there, and I'm just going to glue it down much in the same way that Vicky has demonstrated in her videos. I'm using my fluid matte medium to glue them down. Rice paper glues down so quickly and easily, no wrinkles, no anything. And what I'm doing here, not paying attention to the colors or anything, I'm simply using this as a way of getting my base coat of colors down. Now, when you put the first layer down, sometimes some of that's going to peek through, and sometimes you're not going to see it at the end. But it is going to guide your process. So, these were woodland rice papers. So that's went with the prompt. And then I'm trying and experimenting with a new technique. So in Vicky's videos, she leaves a white border around there. So I attempt to do that as well. Somewhat following the guidance that she's given me, but at some point I do deviate and branch into what I do. You layer these up, that gives a little bit more texture, colors adjust. So we have an all over brown, dark gray, blue gray. And there is what was done after you kind of have this patchwork. Now I'm just going to drag some gesso on my palette knife and drag it through there. So we're taking this, we're removing, getting rid of some of that grid patterning, softening the edges, changing the background. Remember, this is a background. It's not intended to be a focal image. We're not supposed to be making out that there's leaves or feathers or anything. This is just the beginning layers. So I'm just scraping some gesso on there. Anything I put afterwards, any color is going to react differently to the gesso as to the rice paper that has been sealed with the fluid matte medium. And I'm not even paying attention to where the edge is right now. I'm just enjoying the process and thinking about the prompt. Woodland, what are woodland colors? That's what's going through my head. We've got the brown, the dark navy, blue gray. And again, I'm liking where this is. And this technique that Vicky demonstrates and I've learned from is something that I will do again. So now I want to add some stamping. Again, I'm adding more patterning to the background. Remember using those rice papers? That was just step one. It isn't the entire background. It was never intended to be the entire background. Here I'm braying on black acrylic paint onto my silicone stamp and then stamping on there. That's adding another pattern, some more texture to my background. I'm just developing my background. It was never intended to be just the rice paper background, right? I wasn't planning on using the rice paper as an Insta background. So I'm using another stamp here, playing along, just enjoying the process. And in typical me fashion, I get a little carried away and I put a little bit more stamps on here than I should have as I'm looking over the video. But when I start a page, I never really know where it's going to go. So here I'm adding some more stamping. This is kind of a postal stamp. It's got these wavy lines. I'm liking that. That's just adding some interesting pattern and design to my background. When I work in, this prompt journal or my, you know, on tags and stuff, I try to use supplies that I haven't used before or for a while. Here I am brayering on some dark blue gray, and I can't remember the name of that color. Maybe I'll remember as the video continues. Now I want to add some texture to my page, and in doing so, kind of lighten up the page a little bit. So I grab the white modeling paste and I'm putting it through this screen view stencil from the Crafter's Workshop, and this is going to add some interesting texture to my background. And I'm putting this in 3 areas. Because I'm putting this over a large part of the page, a lot of what was initially there with that rice paper technique is gone. You're not seeing that as I can recognize it from where I started. But those woodland pages gave me my color scheme, pointed me in the direction, and got me going down this road. Because I'm working on a woodland theme, I wanted to add some green to this. So I grabbed this stencil from the Crafter's Workshop. It's a leaf stencil. There's trees there, and I'm just inputting some green paint into the background. So we've got brown, this dark blue-gray, and now some green. I want this to look like the forest. After all, that's my prompt, and that's what's guiding me through this. I'm going right on top of some of the modeling paste, breaking that up. Add a little bit more color, so I grab my Inktense blocks and I look for a blue or a green or brown that resembles the colors that I had from the rice paper. Payne's gray, that is the blue gray that I am adding in here right now. So I'm wetting my Inktense block and then adding it. Sometime then you'll see me spraying some water on there, rubbing it. Again, I just want to make a woodland background. What in my mind resembles a woodland background. Somebody else might have a different picture of what that looks like. Trust your own thoughts about it. Trust your own instincts. Do not get hung up on being right or doing it the right way. There is no right way. When you're working with prompts, the same prompt can take 5 people, 5 very different ways. From literal to very abstract. And it's what we bring to the page, our personal connections, our life experience that's going to show up on the page. So I was finding the Payne's gray a little bit too gray, so I grabbed the deep indigo here and I'm adding color. Now, deep indigo is this really lovely blue, dark blue color. Oh, I just love it. It's a little on the green side, looks very foresty to me, and it really enriches the page in my mind. It was looking a little bit dull, a little bit flat before this, and I think that's because I like bright colors, so I struggle with the more muted colors. But adding this indigo, deep indigo color truly did. Now, when you look at this now, very, very little of the rice paper is going to show up at all. There are little bits, there's little bits of the stamping that are showing up. Everywhere you look, there's hints of things, and that's okay. It sat for a couple days, I'll admit. And then I remembered I had these woodland characters. This is from the Dollar Tree. You get 2 of each of these woodland creatures. And I'm just flipping through there, looking for ones, putting it against my backdrop, and I have this deer. So, I went and I cut out the deer and some of these mushrooms. The deer and the mushrooms kind of have some colors, very woodland-like, especially with the mushrooms. And I'm just building my composition. And now I'm going to glue this down with my fluid matte medium. Now this paper is very, very, very thin, so it kind of gets discolored here, or it looks like it's discolored, but when it's completely dry, it goes back to the normal color. It's just the paper is so thin that right now some of that dark from behind is showing through. Love those little mushrooms. Once that's completely dry, I'm finding my focal images aren't popping as much as I want. So I'm grabbing some burnt sienna here and I'm going to paint the mushrooms, give them a wash of this burnt sienna color on top. And I love how that burnt sienna just really pops against this blue, green, brown woodland background that I've created. But it did need that brightness of that color in there. It just seemed to bring a lot of life to this page with that. I'm just using a small round brush. I'm somewhat watering down my paint, and just painting right on top. Now, those mushrooms had some white dots. I'm going to come back in later and add those back in. But, right now I can still see where they are and they're dots. I think I could eyeball it and be okay. And then I grab more of that burnt sienna and some brown, and I'm overpainting, adding color to my deer. Again, I want it to stand out. I like the size of this focal image, but it's very light on the color. So I want to tweak that up, give it a little bit more weight on my page. And I'm just dropping that in, a little bit more, a little bit of burnt sienna, a little bit of the brown, and just making my deer and my mushrooms, my focal images stand out a little bit more on this very dark page. It needed to compete a little bit stronger. Now I'm adding the whites in, the face of the deer, the tail of the deer, and I'll be adding the white on the mushrooms as well. And I'm just dotting, white paint on there. So if you're interested in prompts, my Pick a Prompt pack has 100 prompts, so more, almost enough for 2 full years, day-to-day prompts. And it is a digital download that you can purchase at NINNYSNAPKINS.com. I'll link that in the description box. If working from a prompt is something that you think might help you. I'm just dotting the I with black. And splattering with white, and then I come back and I splatter with the burnt sienna as well, just to add a little bit of that burnt sienna orange type color to the background, tying it all together. So now I've grabbed my angle brush and I've got some black acrylic paint, and I'm going to do some shading on my focal images, on the fox, on the mushrooms, and then I'm going to edge my page. So my application, using the rice paper to start this page, it got me working on the woodland page, but you don't see a lot of it now. And I am going to do that technique again, hopefully preserving more of the rice paper, not doing as much on top of it, getting a very different effect. When you try a new technique, be prepared a couple times. The first time may or may not work exactly the way that it should or give you the effect that you like. So while that got me starting this page and guided my color scheme, to give it another try and see where it takes me next time. So here I'm just edging with the black acrylic paint. It's just framing my picture, framing my page. And making it look like I painted those things on, not just glued them on. So I grabbed my Moments and Memories sentiment pack, and I'm looking for a quote that somehow goes with either the woodland theme or what I ended up using as a focal image. And I found that remember this moment. And I like the size of that. And I auditioned it in several places on the page. And then I grab the other one, Big Adventures Start Little. And I think, oh, with the tiny deer, that might be applicable. So I'm cutting this out. And as you can see, this sentiment, I've shrunk it using the settings on my printer because all my digital sentiment packs, you can shrink them or blow them up, but it's too small. So I go to the full size one and I'm cutting it apart. Oh, and I like this better. Your eye starts in that top left-hand corner and kind of goes down to where the deer is. I like how I cut that sentiment apart and glued it in this way. It seems to fit the page. And again, that's the Moments and Memories Sentiment Pack, and that's available as a digital download at NINNYSNAPKINS.com as well. I'm just gluing that down with some fluid matte medium. Now you could use gel medium if it's a little tough gluing on top of texture. And removing my tape. And there we have the finished page. It was quite a journey. I enjoyed it thoroughly. I learned a few things, tried a few new things. All in all, a great day in the studio. So that's the woodland theme. Until next time, go get creative.